Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 26th of March 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. And as part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice that are based on the newspaper. And you can get your answers evaluated for free. 2 answers every week. All you have to do is write your answers with pen and paper and share it as a PDF file on my WhatsApp or Telegram. And the details are there in the description box below. Right, so this is it. Now today I have 2 questions. One is about India's external trade sector. So recently the Prime Minister congratulated with the increasing export numbers. So it was reported at $400 billion, which was a exceptional achievement. Right, that's why heartening milestone. And next is draft data accessibility and use policy. So there was this opinion actually, right? I just wanted to write this because this to me was more important than the heading of the article. So it is about this topic. It's basically a critical assessment in the opinion section, but we'll go a bit beyond this, right? So thereon you have to attempt these 2 questions. And rest we have pre-centric material over here. Right, so basic details. Peace in border areas key to normal ties, India tells China. Okay, so Mr. Wang Yi, right, their external affairs minister, China's, visited India. It is believed that there is some summit that is going to happen in China, and China wants normalized ties so that Indian counterpart goes to China and they have a talk, right? So that is what it is actually. So he has come and he went to Afghanistan. Thereon he came to India, and then he has departed for Nepal. Right. So he's on his Padyatra. Okay. So naturally he has come and he's meeting his counterpart, Indian External Affairs Minister. And there we have remarks of Mr. Jaishankar over here, and he said that see, the relations are bad. And they cannot be normal till the time we have tensions on the border. There are about 1 lakh troops combined, India and China, on the border. The trade talks are not progressing. It's been there for since April 20th, 2020. So the things cannot be normal. So the Chinese foreign minister said that see, we have to put things in context. We have to, in the bilateral relations, we are doing so many things. We are focusing on trade and commerce. We are focusing on the WTO related issues, intellectual property rights, COVID cooperation, multiple things that we are doing. So within the spectrum of bilateral relations, the border issue is not a very big thing. We should keep this separate. And this has been a policy that we have actually worked with China on multiple fronts, while at the same time we had differences on the border issue. So I hope that what the minister is saying is right. So he says that see, the ties cannot be normal. You are saying this, we have a different perception. For us, the border issue is paramount, and till the time the situation doesn't get solved, our relations cannot be normal, right? So this is what they are saying. So Wang Yi holds talks with Jaishankar and Doval. Mr. Ajit Doval, who's the National Security Advisor, and he was also invited for a summit to China, which he has declined. So they had a meeting, and normally when 2 leaders meet, they also have an agreement. They come up with a document. So no joint agreement was signed upon. So no resolution has taken place. Now this is one thing that you got, right? This pointer over here with reference to India-China relationship. The other thing over here is the Wang Yi made a remark that we need to revive the China-India Plus initiative. And this is important as to what is China Plus initiative. So China Plus initiative is basically an initiative where China and India work together with other countries in the South Asian region. So whatever infrastructure development work has to be done, both China and India collaborate. Where is it? South Asian region, Right. I hope if you are having a doubt about South Asian, just refer to the atlas. Okay, so they were looking at this thing. So this China India plus this idea came about in the Wuhan meet, right? So Wuhan meeting had taken place between Prime Minister and Narendra Modi. This was again in the backdrop of the border tensions that were going on around 2018, right? So this has always been there. So again, the BRICS summit was to take place. Prime so to appease India in a way, you put it this way, or to normalize the ties. So there was the Wuhan summit. So there was a friendly interaction between the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. They also talked about what happening in the Ukraine, and they said that read this line. They discussed Ukraine and their approaches with a common element. Now, I presume that common element is Russia. No, this is not apparently mentioned over here, but we assume it is Russia over here, right? So they talked about this, and the both sides said that, see, we have to work. There has to be immediate ceasefire, and the return to diplomacy. But India and China differed on this also. The China is pretty adamant that the things have gotten bad because of the US leadership and the role of NATO. Because of US and the NATO expanding, Russia was not happy with. Russia was concerned that Ukraine will join NATO, and therefore the tensions have increased, and this led to the war. India disagrees with this opinion over here. And one more thing which reflects the tensions between China and India. So as I said before, that Wang Yi visited Afghanistan, and he had a summit basically where the leaders of the neighboring states, neighbors of Afghanistan, had met. So in this regard, India was not invited. You didn't invite us, we are not happy, right? So this is what it is. Okay, now recently you must have, I think, heard in the social media thing also, Birbhum deaths. This is in West Bengal, and this thing keeps taking place some way or the other. Some incidents, communal especially, takes place. So the Prime Minister had raised concern about this. Okay, so with reference to the Birbhum deaths, the High Court has ordered that CBI must conduct probe. CBI must investigate as to what happened. Now, what happened was that on March 21st, on 21st of March, 8 people were burned to death in the village after a Trinamool Congress Deputy Pradhan, one of the leaders of the Trinamool Congress, which is ruling in the West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee party. So that person died. So because of this, there was a violence, and 8 people were killed because of this. Now you consider this thing. Chief Minister is from which party? TMC. TMC person dies and 8 people dead, and we presume that it may be because of the party workers. So the police is controlled by the Chief Minister, and naturally there is a concern about the objectivity of the police. So there was a demand for a central agency to investigate, to CBI. Now you can read this also. I didn't want to cover this. It's will not be asked again. Bengal's violent politics of area domination. It's a very violent politics has been taking place over the decades actually. Okay. Now coming to CBI. Why did it need the High Court order to get CBI over here? Center could have said, okay, fine, West Bengal investigation will be done by the CBI, as simple as that. It is a central agency. Well, the CBI can be deputed on a state, can be investigated in a particular state only with the prior permission of the state. So prior permission is required as a condition, and West Bengal hardly ever gives this permission over here. Therefore, now the court has instructed that has to be abided by. Now coming to CBI, certain details for prelims. So CBI has to investigate. It's the premier investigative agency of the government, right? You can see this: interstate, international ramifications, or something, complex crimes, anti-corruption, economic crimes, etc. Now this agency was formed as a consequence of the recommendations of the Sanathanam Committee. So this committee was formed to investigate, not even investigate, to consider the issue of increasing corruption in the civil services. So for this, he recommended that there should be an agency, dedicated agency known as the CBI. So CBI was formed, right? And you can see the first pointer again is mentioned, anti-corruption. So CBI was formed. Now, is CBI a statutory body? You may normally refer that it derives its power from Delhi Police Special Powers Act. Derive its power. But CBI was actually formed not due to a statute or an act of the parliament or of the state. It was actually formed via a resolution. And if you read, it will say resolution by the Ministry of Home Affairs. It derives power. It is not formed as a consequence of this. So therefore, it is not considered as a statutory body. So they say that the CBI should be given statutory powers. Now for your prelims 1 homework, how is the CBI director appointed? Right? Basically, it's obviously appointed by the president, but on the recommendations of a committee. Who all are the members of this committee? Heartening milestone, and we have a question over here. So read this question. Briefly assess India's performance in external trade sector. Right, so we are basically referring to the exports, imports, all of this. Also bring out the issues and challenges and recent measures taken by the government, which we have actually. I have it in detail, abundance actually. So you can see all this from the PIB. I have taken it. So that you don't have to worry. So basically, we did this again yesterday or day before, that the export figures have increased, right? So export has crossed $400 billion mark, right? So 400 billion, it's a very, very big achievement. And this is in comparison, 400 billion is in comparison to 330 billion in 2017-18. Now, naturally, the pandemic years is not a good reference. We want to be better than the pre-pandemic level, right? So in that reference, it is a good figure. And in this is happening in the context when there was a lot of difficulties, right? There were a lot of difficulties. The freight prices have gone up. The fuel is becoming expensive. Inflation is rising. Then because the lockdown was there, cargoes were not available. So there were a lot of difficulties. And in spite of all this, the Indian economy has done well to breach, to go beyond what they were doing in the pre-pandemic level 2017-2018. And actually this figure is again before, when we say that Indian economy was going into a slowdown 2018-19, we say that the slowdown thing has started. So significant achievement over here. And in this again, when we see this, it is on the back of last year's fiscal pandemic induced slump in global demand. So globally things were not good. Still we have been able to achieve this feat, and we see performance in particularly good performance in key value added sectors of engineering goods, apparels, garments, etc. Right, so in that also we see a improvement over here. And I have always keep saying that textile sector is particularly important for creating job-led growth. Okay, but in share, because of the size, the overall size of the petroleum products were the biggest. So petroleum products were the biggest contributors to exports, and that has always been the case. And now you may think that India doesn't have oil. Then how is it India exporting oil? So basically, we have these refinery companies, Indian Oil, Hindustan Petroleum, etc. So they get the crude, the basic oil that is there. It is refined into petrol, diesel, kerosene, etc., and then exported. So thereby, petroleum is one of the biggest things that we import, and it is also one of the biggest things which we export also. Okay. And because of the oil prices, the surge in the oil prices, we stand to gain because of this. Okay, so this is there. And then the minister for commerce ministry, Mr. Piyush Goyal actually appreciated the role played by the Indian embassies and envoys in exploring new opportunities. Remember, anytime somebody comes from India, from other country to India, also they talk about trade cooperation. We also talk about trade cooperation. So they say that Indian diplomats, foreign service officials, they have played a positive role in enhancing the trade relations. That is why this has happened, right? And in fact, we may refer to the Foreign Trade Policy 2015 to 2020, which again talks about foreign relation. In that, trade has to be a significant contributor. Okay, right. So this is there. This is all good things that have taken place. Now the concern is briefly assess India's performance in external trade sector. So exports, very good, but imports have doubled actually. If exports have improved, imports have kind of doubled. So imports have increased at a much faster rate, and this has actually led to the widening of the current account deficit. In fact, our country is suffering from the problem of twin deficit. Twin deficit is fiscal deficit and current account deficit. And what is current account deficit? That is, we are importing in excess of the exports, and this figure is increasing. Now, I don't have the real figure in this context, but yes, it is at this moment it is around 2.5%, right? So 2.5% is the current account deficit. So they say that the current account deficit has actually doubling of the trade deficit in the April-February period, right? So it's only with reference to this time period over here, April-February. So it has doubled to more than 175 billion. So basically, when the export is increasing, we are only talking about this part. But what about the imports? That we are actually importing much more than that. So this is a cause of concern. Now, if we critically examine this, the increase in export, one of the significant contributors for exports in general is agricultural products. We export raw materials, etc. Now, because of the global inflation, because of the increase in prices globally, so whatever we are selling, we are also selling at a high price, right? So global inflation will be there, things are expensive, so when we are selling, we'll sell it at a higher price, so that therefore the value of exports will increase. Furthermore, since the currency, Indian currency has depreciated, or for us dollar has appreciated, so when somebody is exporting, so value of those exports merely on account of export will actually increase, right? So currency factor is also playing a role over here. And one more thing that is concerning is in the context of our economy, we tend to import capital goods, but we don't find the import of capital goods. So why is this important? Capital goods are machines, etc., that are actually required in production related activities. But our this thing is okay. That means if an Indian industrialist is importing more of these capital goods, that means they are looking at more. They want to increase the capacity of their plants, so they want to produce more. But this reflects that when they are not purchasing more capital goods, that means they are not investing more. So this goes against the issue of job-led growth. So more jobs will not be created if more investments are not taking place. So this is a cause of concern. Furthermore, the things are aggravated because of the war in Ukraine, the sanctions, the rise in the oil prices, etc. Right, so this is it. You can read this. This is basically explaining that higher commodity prices should help with the commodity-based exports like petroleum products, etc. Right. Here we have 2.5% current account deficit in 22-23. See, higher twin deficit, that is current account deficit and the fiscal deficit. And what is the fiscal deficit? 6.9% target, 6.4%. Now, here are the steps that the government has taken since 2014, right? Modi government came then. Foreign trade policy 2015-20. I think you can read this. I just want to quickly go through this. New logistic division, so improving in the logistics sector. In fact, you can also refer to the points on A production linked incentive scheme, right? That is also being done. This is not mentioned actually. Okay. Logistics is a cause of concern. The logistic cost in our country is very, very high, right? Logistic cost is very, very high, and the logistics performance is measured by the logistics performance index, which is released by the World Bank, and it was asked in the prelims paper. Then we have the Niryat Bandhu scheme, export Niryat Bandhu friend. So to be government is a friend of exporters. So to promote that, it was introduced. I'm clearing this. You can read yourself, right? Agriculture export policy was introduced to promote the agriculture exports and benefit the exporters over here. Remission of duties and taxes on exported products, RODTEP. Champion service sectors have been identified. So basically, to promote service sector, to create certain industries which are performing very well, right? So champion sectors. Okay, package in light of the COVID pandemic has been announced. Active role of Indian missions. So all of this is given in the Ministry of Commerce, PIB. Okay, now coming to this article, this is very important. And this is the question. Actually, I didn't go into the nitty-gritties of the framing of the question. I just want you to have a note on the draft data accessibility and use policy, right? I just want you to have this over here. And I have a bit simplified this over here, right? So when you're writing this question over here, critically examine the draft accessibility and use policy 2022. So you need to state the features. So what all things are there, the purpose of this policy, and then mention the concerns. Simple. And after concerns, way forward. So these things I want you to have a note on this thing, and don't exceed 250 words. Very simple. What is the name of the policy? Data accessibility and use policy. So it is about data accessibility. Now the government appreciates that data is the new gold. Sometimes it is also known as data as the new oil. That is, it's very, very important. And government says that we have so much data with us. A public sector, we are delivering services. We have all the record of the citizens. We have data and data. Lot of data is there with us. We have the rail services. We have the Aadhaar. We have the RTO and so many things. So we have data. And this data can be used by the government, and government can use this data for making informed policy decisions, for citizen-centric service delivery, right? Citizen-centric, when they have the data of the citizen, service delivery, citizen-centric service delivery. I'll share the notes. My handwriting is not very good. I'll share whatever I've written. Right. So basic thing is that government can use this data for certain things. Policy making, service delivery, governance, and also it can monetize the data by selling it to the private sector. The private sector, which also needs data. It needs data for marketing. It needs your telecallers call you, right? They have data. How do they get the data? Then for research related activities, again for marketing, and also about social innovation. What if there is a problem in the society and the private sector comes up with a plan which is again profitable for them nevertheless, right? So social innovation. So the government can sell, when government sells the data, it is monetizing the data basically. Okay. So for this purpose, the policy says that there should be a creation of the Indian Data Council. Indian Data Council, which will basically oversee the metadata, right? It will basically oversee the data related aspects. Okay. Metadata standards. Then, or you can just keep writing. There will be an Indian Data Office and data officers. And every ministry of the government must have data management units, right? So it is basically talking about certain institutions should be there. Now, one thing, the data that is being collected, naturally data is collected by the government, it is giving to the private also. Data should also be anonymized. That is, it doesn't reveal, you have you get a collection of data without the names and address details, but you have, okay, fine, we have so many people of so many age group whose preference is so and so, they are belonging to the such and such geography. So such kind of data is anonymized, it cannot be traced back to you, right? So that is that. And metadata, when I say metadata, it's basically something that is there in your ID card also. Your name is so and so, your telephone number is so and so, your address is so and so, right? Metadata. Okay. Now, there are certain concerns that have been expressed in this article, and this article is all about the concerns. So, first of all, it is saying that it is silent on norms, rules, and mechanisms as to how this goal of the government will be fulfilled. What goal? As to how the data will be used for policy making, for citizen-centric service delivery, governance, and how will this data be monetized. It is silent on norms, rules, and mechanisms. There has to be something about this. And this raises certain ethical and procedural dilemmas. It raises certain ethical and procedural dilemmas. So, one thing is, it is silent on norms, and there is concern about ethical and procedural dilemmas. What issues? There are concerns associated with privacy related aspects, right? How is the data being stored? Could this data be misused by somebody? Could this data be leaked? What are the safeguards for that to protect the data? Aadhaar data was leaked, right? And in case of all of this happening, who will be held accountable? All of this has to be fixated. Who will be answerable, basically, when I say accountable? And when the government says that we can sell the data, so it is basically that the government seems to be believing that the government is the owner of the data. Government is the owner. But we should move away from this outlook, and government should actually have the approach that it is the trustee of the data. It is a trustee where people have given you the data with some trust, and you have a responsibility. So you have a responsibility towards the people. You're not mere owners, you have a responsibility. Right? So this is a wrongful approach over here. It is monetary centric. The government has responsibility. Government is a trustee. We need a trustee based framework over here. Okay. Then it does not prescribe the quality standards. It's a bit unreasonable actually, but what quality frameworks will be there? Because if the government states that, okay, this framework, this quality standard we will adopt, then in that case what happens is they will say that the quality is fixated, then the scope of innovation is not there. So I mean, so anyways, quality is not specified over here. It is monetary centric. Monetization seems to be one of the goals, and all of this is happening when there is an absence of a law that protects privacy. There is a lack of personal data protection law. The data protection bill was introduced, but we are quiet on this thing. What has happened? And this data protection bill was asked in 2018, by the way, mains. Right? So these are certain concerns. And what needs to be done? Here are the pension issues over here. First of all, we need to balance. Some framework has to be created to balance the public use and private innovation. Now, data that is collected is a social common. And the social common should be used for the benefit of everyone. Social common should be used for the benefit of everyone. Right? So the social commons of data are governed, the government should ensure that the social commons of data are governed as an inappropriable commons that belong to all citizens. It is belonging to all citizens, and therefore the government as being a trustee or a fiduciary. Fiduciary is somebody who keeps your data, like Facebook is a fiduciary, so they have your data. It has the responsibility to promote data use for public goods, right? So data is a social common, and it cannot be given to anybody just like that. That is why it says governed as an inappropriable commons. Appropriate, take, inappropriable cannot be. The third point, democratization of data value is ensured through accountable institutional mechanisms for data governance. So accountability has to be fixated. So these are the things that you need to address over here. Okay, very quickly we'll conclude now. So online voting for NRIs under consideration. Fine. So Parliament is going on, and the law minister was asked a question in the question hour. And what time is the question hour in the Parliament? 11 to 12. 12 is known as the 0 hour after that. Right. So question hour. So in a supplementary question, this thing was asked. And what are supplementary questions? Basically, there are two types of questions, right? One is the question which is normally given by the MP to the minister, and this is a normal question. No asterisk mark is put over here. So in this, written reply has to be given by the person, and therefore there is no scope for asking supplementary question. When a question is asked and an asterisk is drawn on this, or let me put it, starred question, right? So when it is a starred question, then supplementary questions can be asked, right? So they are saying that we are going to work on that NRIs should also be allowed to vote. They also have a stake in what is happening in the country. So in fact, it will be a good thing, because in a country there are people, let's say you are from Chandigarh and you are in working in Bangalore, those situations are also there. You have a stake in Punjab maybe. So you want to vote, you want to have a say in the government, but you don't have, because you are living in a different place and it's very, very expensive to come back. Okay, so NRI as well as the migrant workers also, that issue can be taken up. Okay, then we have the electoral rolls, but there are duplications. Some people have two voter IDs also, have one place and the other place. So the government says that we want to link Aadhaar. Aadhaar is a more secure, it is linked to your biometrics, right? So it is more secure and also recent also. So this they want to do so that to weed out the issues with the electoral rules. Then bit of a rhetoric with reference to electronic voting machines. So we have the EVMs in our country. So the people from the opposition, they say that there are concerns about the EVMs, and to address this we also had something known as voter verified paper audit trail. So you must have voted, so paper, the name of the candidate that you have voted or the party would have come over here, right? So this is there, but every time I think something or the other, EVM machines were taken from one place to another in mysterious circumstances. Those things have also been seen. So this is what is there. Clarla Sola wins Suvarna Chakoram. I'm not interested in what is this Clara. It's a movie basically. It's a Costa Rican movie. Nobody will ask you. But what I'm concerned with Suvarna Chakoram, what is this? And who issues this? So Suvarna is gold, and Chakoram is basically a bird known as pheasant. Right, so this golden pheasant, and then there is another award known as Rajata Chakaram, which is standing for silver crow pheasant. So I presume it is in Malayalam, it is said this way. Right. So International Film Festival of Kerala was taking place, and then these awards were given. So I feel that could be important for pre. And this another Tamil movie, Pebbles. I mean Kusangal, which basically means pebbles. INS Valsura awarded President's Color. First of all, what is President's Color? President's Color is basically an award given to a regiment of the armed forces, be it Air Force, Navy, and Army. Right. So this is given, and the unit officers or the unit people wear it on the left arm of theirs. And the President's Color is also known as Nishan. So the unit officers of the INS, Indian Naval Ship, in INS, I'm getting confused with the S over here. So INS Valsura, they have been awarded. Now what is Valsura? So INS Valsura is basically a Navy's premier technology training establishment. And in the prior times, there was also a torpedo. Torpedo is basically a missile that is discharged from the submarine or the ships. So they call them a torpedo. That goes in the water basically. Right. So torpedo. Right. So it's about the torpedo. The name is torpedo, and the Valsura literal meaning is swordfish. Right then, so this essentially concludes. There were news about the Ukraine issue. The West considers having, stopping the oil to introduce oil from Russia under the sanction that is going on. So those news were there. Repeat news I have not covered for the time being. So Monday maybe we'll revisit it again. Okay. So this is it from my side. Thank you for streaming in to IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish.